"15 chilling military encounters with UFOs. 15. The Dalles Incident of 1979. Dalles, New Mexico, located on the Colorado-New Mexico border, is a small town and home of the Jicarilla Apache Reservation. It's also the location of an alleged confrontation between extraterrestrials and the U.S. military. In 1979, a rumor began circulating about some sort of underground military base under the nearby Archilta Mesa. Strange electronic communications were being intercepted that had to be from nearby. The rumor persisted, but there was never any real proof. Sometime later, a man named Philip Schneider came forward. Schneider worked as an engineer who had been contracted by the U.S. government. He claimed that, in 1979, he worked on the construction of a secret military base in Dalles. Schneider's story gave credence to the rumor, but his claim was to ignite an even bigger shocker. While working on the project, Schneider claims there was a substantial military presence, especially heavily armed special forces units, odd for a simple excavation and construction. Then one day, while conducting underground drilling, he was confronted by what he claimed was a tall, gray-skinned alien. As others appeared, his military escort opened fire and killed 2 of them before one of the aliens fired some sort of plasma beam back at them. Schneider lost a few fingers in the exchange, but claims he was saved by an Army Green Beret who gave his life for him. Schneider retreated as more military units poured into the cavern to engage the aliens. In total, Schneider claims 60 men, soldiers and engineers, were killed in the battle, with only a small handful getting out alive. Reportedly, the aliens then retreated back into the cavern where they might remain to this day. Schneider believes that the government knew of the alien presence, hence the military escort. Schneider was later found murdered in his apartment, execution style. 14. Operation Highjump. In 1947, famed American Admiral Richard E. Byrd led a large naval force to Antarctica, including 4,000 military troops, comprised of not only American, but British, Australian, and Canadian units. It was called Operation Highjump. Officially, the invasion of Antarctica was a winter training exercise. However, most records of the operation are still classified. World War II records showed that Nazi Germany led an expedition to Antarctica in 1938, and German naval units were still being encountered in the South Atlantic as late as 1947. There was also some classified British activity in the area during the war as well. In fact, the Americans detonated a nuclear missile there in 1958, under Operation Argus. But why? Conspiracy theorists believe it all stems around Germany's Thule society and alien technology being harnessed by the Nazis deep underground in a secret Antarctic base. This is the theory. When the German expedition reached Antarctica in 1938, they found a vast series of underground caverns heated by subterranean rivers. By the end of the war, this was the new home to the Nazi regime. Being led by the occult following Thule society, they made contact with ancient aliens and began to unlock the secrets to their technology. The Nazis constructed, with extraterrestrial help, flying crafts resembling classic UFOs. The Allied force then invaded in 1947. When Admiral Byrd returned from Antarctica, the only public statement he ever made on the operation was that we should be vigilant for an air attack from the South Pole, urging serious defensive measures be taken. Conspiracy theorists point to these statements as the reason for a renewed U.S. attack on Antarctica and the eventual destruction of the Nazis and their alien allies through nuclear means in 1958. 13. The Chilling Time Warp. On Sunday, April 25, 1977, a Chilean Army squad was on routine guard patrol, under the command of young Corporal Armando Valdez Garrido. The temperature was dropping and the patrol set up camp near the town of Butte, in northern Chile. They built a fire and stationed 2 soldiers on guard duty. Shortly before 4 a.m., a guy reported a strange light moving in the sky, descending towards them. The soldiers watched as the light drew steadily closer. It was brilliant and lit up the whole area. The soldiers began to panic as the light came down by a nearby hill. The corporal and a few soldiers went to investigate. When they reached within 500 meters, 1,640 feet, a huge glowing object was visible. They described it as a violet-colored oval, about 25 meters, 82 feet, in diameter, with 2 glowing points of deep red lights that flashed. The glowing object began to approach the soldiers' location. Some soldiers began to cry, others prayed. The corporal approached the object and shouted for it to identify itself. As he continued closer, he entered a mist that was surrounding the object, causing his soldiers to lose sight of him. The object soon left the area, leaving the soldiers wondering what happened to their corporal. About 15 minutes later, he appeared, stumbling, and then collapsed to the ground. All the soldiers were clean-shaven, but the corporal now sported a beard of many days' growth, and his digital watch read that the date was April 30, 1977, 5 days later. It appeared as if he had traveled through time 5 days in the future and then returned to a point 15 minutes after he disappeared. Corporal Valdez could not explain what occurred and it has remained a mystery. 12. The 1998 Chinese Air Force encounter. On Monday, October 19, 1998, 4 Chinese military radar stations in the Hebei province reported an unidentified object near a military flight training school in Chengdu. As the object did not appear to be a military or civilian craft, Colonel Li, the base commander, ordered the object to be intercepted. A Jiangjiao 6 fighter jet was launched on an intercept course with the unknown object. Numerous witnesses on the ground were observing the object from the military base. They described it as a small star which grew larger, as if were descending. It was reported that the object had a mushroom-shaped dome on top, with a flat bottom containing brilliant, rotating lights. The Jiangjiao 6 jet flew within 4,000 meters, 13,200 feet, before the object sharply shot upward, easily evading the jet fighter. As the jet tried to close the distance, the object would quickly accelerate out of range before quickly returning to a position right above it. The pilot and his radar officer were astounded. He requested permission to open fire on the object with the jet's 20mm cannon, but was denied. He was ordered to continue his pursuit and observe only. As he followed the object to an altitude of 12,000 meters, 39,600 feet, he began to run low on fuel. He had to break off his pursuit and return to base. 2 additional fighter jets were dispatched to continue to pursuit, but the object disappeared from radar before they could arrive. 11. The Tehran Dimond 1976. One of the most famous military UFO encounters is also one of the best documented. It occurred just after midnight on September 19, 1976, when an unknown object entered restricted airspace over Tehran, Iran. The Imperial Iranian Air Force ordered Shahrokhi Air Force Base to scramble a U.S. made F-4 Phantom II jet fighter to investigate. Flying in from 282 kilometers, 175 miles, west of Tehran, Captain Mohammad Reza Azani's F-4 noted that as he closed to about 40 nautical miles, 74 kilometers, he could easily see its brilliant light. As he got within 25 nautical miles, 46 kilometers, he lost all communications and instrumentation. Azani broke off his intercept course and was forced to return to base, restoring all functionality as he did so. At that point, a second F-4 jet was launched, piloted by Lieutenant Parvez Jafari. As he closed in on the object at Mach 1, the mysterious craft kept a steady pace ahead at a range of 25 nautical miles, 46 kilometers. Jafari witnessed a second smaller object detach from the primary object and close in on his position at high speed. Believing he was under attack, Jafari attempted to launch an AIM-9 Sidewinder missile, but suddenly lost all weapons control. He took evasive action with the smaller object pursuing, before it decreased speed and rejoined with the larger object. Jafari instrumentation returned and the object accelerated away. What Jafari described was an object of alternating blue, green, red, and orange lights, all flashing in a sequence, so rapid that they could all be seen at once. Jafari would later retire as an Air Force general and, in 2007, reaffirm at an American conference that he believed the vehicle was not of this Earth. 10. The Mondstadt Air Force Base Missile Incident. Mondstadt Air Force Base, in Montana, during the Cold War, was home to a flight of 10 Minuteman ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, part of the America's strategic nuclear arsenal. On March 16, 1967, Captain Robert Salas was on duty overseeing missile readiness when suddenly, one by one, the missiles became inoperable. Simultaneously, base security informed him of mysterious red glowing objects hovering in the sky above some of the silos, and one hovering outside the front gate. Maintenance and security teams were all in awe as they watched the mysterious lights. As long as the objects remained in the sky, maintenance crews were unable to get the missiles back online. Eventually the objects moved off and disappeared into the sky. An in-depth investigation was unable to explain what happened. Power had not been lost to the missiles, yet for some unknown reason, each missile apparently suffered from an inexplicable guidance and control (GNC) system fault. Boeing engineers examined the missiles and the systems could find no technical explanation. They were only able to reproduce the effects on all 10 missiles by introducing a 10-volt pulse onto a data line. The chance of such a pulse occurring on its own on a shielded secure line is virtually impossible, unless it occurred by way of an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, of substantial magnitude. An EMP of that size would have required, in 1967 technology, very large and heavy equipment of the kind that was not readily available. The actual source of the pulse that caused the missiles to shut down or the nature of the lights remains a mystery to this day. 9. The USS Memphis Encounter. On October 24, 1989, sailors aboard the submarine USS Memphis experienced something none of them would ever forget. Out of Cape Canaveral, their mission was to patrol the security perimeter for the U.S. Space Command whenever the space shuttle was on the launch pad. That night, the sub was 150 miles, 241 kilometers, off the Florida coast, cruising at a depth of 500 feet. The sub began to experience electrical anomalies, malfunctioning systems, and loss of navigational control. The order was given for all stop. The captain ordered the nuclear reactor to be shut down, switched to diesel engines, and surfaced the sub. Once above water, the surface watch saw the rainy night was lit up bright red. A large inverted V-shaped object was hovering off the port side. The captain ordered a distance measurement be taken. Using a laser rangefinder, it was determined that the object was 200 meters at the closest point, and 1,000 meters to the farthest point, making it incredibly over a half-mile across. The object then made a half-circle around the sub, passing across the stern, causing electronic systems to go haywire as it did so. The sailors could easily see rain being blocked under its red glow. The sea appeared to swell as the object passed over. After it completed its pass across the stern, the object grew brighter and moved off at remarkable speed. The sailors lost sight of the huge object within seconds, and the submarine's systems returned to normal. After a quick systems check, the reactor was returned to full power and the sub got underway. When debriefed the following day, Air Force authorities attempted to explain the sighting away as an exploding weather satellite. Almost the entire crew was then reassigned. No official explanation has ever been given. 8. The 1986 Brazilian Air Force chase. Up to 20 unidentified objects were tracked by ground radar on the night of May 19, 1986, flying over several states in southern Brazil, according to Aeronautics Minister, General Otávio Moura Lima. Control tower personnel at the São José dos Campos airport spotted 8 unidentified objects on their radar. They confirmed the sighting with the control towers in São Paulo and Brasília. The objects were traveling at speeds up to 1,500 km/h, 1,000 miles per hour. Using binoculars, the São José Tower can see that one of the objects is red-orange in color and has defined edges. Shortly after, an executive Xingu jet reports that can also see the objects at an altitude of 3,000 meters, 10,000 feet. The private jet is owned by retired Air Force Colonel José Silva, president of the oil company Petrobras. Silva orders his jet to follow the objects. The Air Defense Command is informed and 2 F-5E jet fighters are scrambled from Santa Cruz Air Base to intercept the objects. Additionally, 3 missile-armed Mirage F-103 jets are launched from Anápolis Air Base. The jets have radar contact with the objects but are unable to visually confirm the targets. At a speed of Mach 1, the jets attempt to close the distance. Radar showed the objects moving from side to side in a zigzagging maneuver. At 11:15 p.m., the first F-5E makes visual contact with one of the brightly lit objects and chases it at Mach 1.1, 1,320 km/h. The other jets maneuvered into a tracking position. When the tower notified them, they picked up another 10 objects closing in on them from behind at 32 kilometers, 20 miles. Unable to visually confirm the objects, the jets take evasive action, at which time the radar targets disappear. Unable to relocate them, all the jet fighters return to base. 7. The 1957 B47 UFO Encounter. In the pre-dawn hours of July 17, 1957, an Air Force B47 jet bomber, equipped with electronic countermeasures, ECM, was on a training mission over Mississippi. They had taken off from Forbes Air Force Base, in Topeka, Kansas, for exercises over the Gulf Coast. The bomber was manned by 6 highly trained officers. As they were preparing to head home, at around 4 a.m., radar picked up an object tracking them from a distance of 700 miles. Though the jet was flying at 500 miles per hour, radar showed the unidentified object closing in on them. The B47 flew from Mississippi, through Louisiana and Texas, on into Oklahoma, over a 1.5-hour period of time. The entire time, the object followed. Occasionally, the crew was able to visually view the object, which appeared as a bright light, and was still showing up as a solid object by ground radar. The bomber's ECM monitoring systems also detected the object. ECM equipment did not work like radar. Instead, the monitoring system detected any electromagnetic signals that might be emitted from a target. It would be very useful in locating enemy radar installations. The detecting equipment monitored the object as it closed in on them and then amazingly flew a complete circle around them before flying off. Then, while over Louisiana, the captain saw a light to his left fast approaching the plane. He ordered the crew to brace themselves as the object flew past the cockpit at unbelievable speed before disappearing. This light shadowed them off and on over the next hour with ground radar tracking it the entire time. When the captain requested permission to intercept, the object instantly dropped over 15,000 feet in altitude. Low on fuel, the B47 had to return to base as the object flew off towards Oklahoma. 6. the Stephenville Lights. One of the most widely known UFO reports of the past decade is the Stephenville Lights. On January 8, 2008, 40 witnesses in the small Texas town of Stephenville, southwest of Dallas, reported very bright lights in the sky. It began around 6:15 p.m. These silent bright lights were seen moving slowly across the sky, at times exhibiting quick maneuvers, before slowing down again. A group of F-16 fighter jets were even seen chasing the objects. The military issued a statement 2 days later that no jets were operating in that airspace, the Brownwood Military Operating Area, that evening. Civilian investigators contacted the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, to verify the military's position. The FAA reported that a group of 8 F-16s from the 457th Fighter Squadron had entered the area at approximately 6:17 p.m., and remained in the area for about 30 minutes. That information was made public and the military was forced to issue a press release acknowledging the error and admitting the presence of the fighters that night. However, the military claims the fighters were simply conducting training maneuvers and that any bright lights must have been LU/2B/B flares, brighter than ordinary flares. Released radar tracking shows extraordinary objects that could not have been flares. One object was traveling at a speed of 2,100 miles per hour, another appearing way larger than the jet that was chasing it. Another object was tracked for over an hour as it entered the area on a trajectory straight towards restricted airspace over former U.S. President George W. Bush's Crawford Ranch. Numerous police officers stopped to watch the strange lights and the jets flying through the sky. One officer captured dashcam footage, which was seized by military authorities. The military never issued a satisfactory explanation for the events over Stephenville, Texas. 5. The Ovo Incident. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, former Soviet military commanders revealed records detailing an incredible incident that occurred the night of October 4, 1982. World War III was very close to being a reality due to what they call the Ovo Incident. That night a large luminous object was seen hovering over the Soviet nuclear missile base near the town of Bielokorovish, in the Ukraine. The object was first sighted about a mile away near the village of Usovo. Army officers in other areas outside of the base also reported the light, as well as other strange lights hovering above a nearby forest. As many as 5 lights total were seen in the area. One officer reported that as he drove near the area of one of the lights, his military radio was filled with static. While nearly 1,000 military personnel were watching the bright light in the sky, drama was unfolding deep inside the bunker. Major M. Davidovich Kataman, in charge of the missile panels, never saw the lights himself. He reported that during the sighting, several R-12 nuclear missiles activated on their own, without any signal being received from Moscow. None of the officers had begun the launch sequence. The panels all lit up as it appeared that the launch codes were being put in to activate the missiles. All they could do was stand by helplessly as the missiles prepared to launch. Suddenly, the sequence ended and the panels shut off. They discovered later that this occurred as the strange lights outside moved off into the distance out of sight. Subsequent system tests show no defects in the missile launch programs. All the safeguards to prevent inadvertent launches were still in place. There was never any explanation for what occurred. 4. 1952 F86 UFO Dogfight. In the 1950s, U.S. Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt was the first director of Project Blue Book, the unit tasked with investigating and analyzing reports of unidentified flying objects. In fact, he is most famous for coining the term unidentified flying object, because he believed the term flying saucer was too misleading. In a report that he disclosed years later, an incident occurred in the summer of 1952 that his superiors ordered be stricken from official project records. Rupp received a report from an intelligence officer about an incident over an undisclosed air base. It was early morning, when radar picked up an unknown object traveling very fast, just northeast of the airfield, but its altitude was unknown. 2 F-86 jets were scrambled to intercept. Once airborne, the jets began to search for the object at different altitudes. One jet descended to about 5,000 feet when he noticed a flash just below him. He dived and headed toward the light. As he closed, he noticed what he thought was a low-flying weather balloon until he realized it was keeping pace ahead of him at great speed. Once he was about 1,000 yards from the object, he could see it clearly, not a balloon, but actually more flattened, like a donut without a hole. He closed to 500 yards when suddenly the object sped up and began to pull away. He opened fire on the object, but it climbed quickly and was gone within a few seconds. The pilot returned to base. The pilot was well respected and the fact that he shot at the object couldn't be ignored. But that's exactly what the brass did. Captain Rupp read the report and was then ordered to burn it. 3. The Kinross Air Force Base Incident. It was a quiet evening on November 23, 1953, when U.S. Air Force radar controllers became alerted to an unknown target entering U.S. airspace over Lake Superior, on the Canadian border near Michigan. An F-89C Scorpion interceptor jet, piloted by Lieutenant Felix Moncler and radar operator Lieutenant Robert Wilson, was scrambled to intercept from Kinross Air Force Base in Michigan. Ground radar operators reported that Moncler flew high above the target at the speed of about 500 miles per hour. He then descended down and closed in on the object from above while crossing over northern Lake Superior at an altitude of 7,000 feet. Controllers were astonished as they observed the F-89C's radar blip close in on the unidentified target and then merge with it on the screen. The two radar blips became one. The target blip then quickly left the area, disappearing off the radar. A thorough search was conducted but no trace of the F-89C or its crew was ever found, no debris or wreckage. Canadian aviation authorities maintained that they had no planes in the area at the time. No ground witnesses could confirm even seeing Moncler's jet or the unidentified object. Moncler, his radar operator, and his plane were never seen again. 2. The Rendlesham Forest Sighting. Rendlesham Forest is a large forest in Suffolk, England, near the NATO air bases, Raff Bentwaters and Raff Woodbridge, at the time leased to the United States Air Force. On December 26, 1980, at about 3 a.m., 2 Air Force security policemen witnessed bright lights descend into the forest, about a mile from the east gate to Raff Woodbridge. Believing it was a downed aircraft, they went to investigate. They reported finding a strange glowing object, triangular in shape, metallic with strange markings, about 3 meters across and 2 meters in height. It had a reddish light on top and a bank of blue lights below. It appeared to be hovering or resting on some unseen landing gear. As they moved in closer, the object moved away from them. They immediately reported the sighting to their superiors. The next day, a subsequent patrol investigated the sighting and found indentations in the ground where the object had been as well as burn marks on nearby broken trees. Plaster casts were made of the indentations and a report was filed with command. The next night, another glowing object was spotted within the forest with a pulsating red light, with more lights seen moving above the trees. Deputy Base Commander, Colonel Charles Holt decided to organize a team and investigate himself. Holt carried a handheld microcassette recorder and narrated their search for the record. He and his team witnessed the pulsing light moving through the forest, making sharp angular movements and alternating between red, green, and blue lights. One of the objects in the sky was then seen giving off a white beam of light that lit up the ground beneath it as it moved across the forest. Colonel Holt filed an official report and was unable to explain the mysterious lights. 1. Roswell. It is an incident so infamous that it is instantly known by only word, Roswell. This single event brought the flying saucer phenomenon to the forefront of popular culture. In early July 1947, ranch foreman Mac Brazel discovered a large debris field on his ranch, north of Roswell, New Mexico. Appearing to crash debris, he contacted the local military base at Roswell Army Airfield. The base sent out Major Jesse Marcel, who witnessed the debris, and subsequently the military ordered a complete cleanup and retrieval of all of it. On July 8, after reviewing the debris, Base Commander Colonel William Blanchard ordered Lieutenant Walter Haut to issue a press release stating that the Army had indeed recovered a crashed flying saucer. That same day, General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force, notified the press that the press release was in error and that they had mistook a downed weather balloon for a crashed flying saucer. The incident was a non-event and faded into obscurity. Then, in the late 1970s, retired Jesse Marcel went public claiming that the debris he recovered was definitely not of this Earth, thus starting the biggest UFO conspiracy theory of all time. In 1995, the U.S. Air Force attempted to close the matter by admitting that the debris was actually from a classified project called Mogul, high-altitude balloons designed to detect Soviet atomic bomb testing. However, Marcel, and even Walter Haut, claimed it was impossible that they, or Cole Blanchard, could possibly mistake a downed top-secret balloon for what they found in that field. Since then, other military personnel have come forward adding to the story, telling of found alien bodies, recovered technologies, and the secret Hangar 18. We may never know what was really recovered that day in Roswell.